We've all got issues, so let's talk about them. I'm your host, Juan Ayala, and this is Actors with Issues. Hello, ladies, gents, and non-binary friends. Welcome back to Actors with Issues, bringing you another quick and casual chat with guests from across TV, film, and Broadway. I am your host, Juan Ayala, and today's guest is an actor that you've seen in Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Parts 1 and 2, Barbie, NCIS, and the upcoming second half of the sixth season of Netflix's global hit Cobra Kai, which premieres November 15th. It's Patrick Luwis. Patrick, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So let's chat earlier. So I'm curious, like, where did you grow up? What was sort of life like before you discovered acting, and what was that turn where you discovered it and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is for me.
No, yeah, definitely, man. It's kind of the last thing I thought I'd be doing. I grew up in Washington, D.C., or just outside of D.C. in Northern Virginia. And I was, it's just I didn't really have any friends who did it, and I hadn't been introduced to it through parents or like mentors or anyone. So it just never really felt like an option or something I'd considered. And then I ended up taking a class in college on a whim, sort of, and it was a theater class to fill a fine arts requirement, and I loved it. I was sort of like, where has this been my whole
Mhm.
life? This is awesome. And then that kind of snowballed into me auditioning for Romeo and Juliet at my college, and then I ended up getting Romeo, and that was my introduction to theater, and yeah, and from there, man, I basically ended up I switched my major and ended up majoring in theater, and then after college, sort of gave myself a year. I was like, let's go out to LA, see what I can do, and after about, you know, yeah, it's hilarious because in hindsight, I said I'd give myself a year to see what would happen. Like that would be enough time to, because I knew I'd regret not doing it, right? If I didn't
Yeah.
try it, I knew I'd regret it. So I was like, I have to at least go out there and give it everything for about a year. And then I think a year to the day, I got my manager and started getting better auditions. And here we are, 6 years later.
But like we hear that often with actors, they'll try and give themselves a timeline, but as you discovered, it took you sort of your first year to find a rep, and that's really what sort
Oh
of helps
yeah,
get the ball rolling. I believe it was maybe Jenna Fisher from The Office. She said that she was going to give herself like 6 years, and by like
right.
the start of the seventh year, she was like, "I'm tired of this," and her managers were like, "Suck it up, come on, you know what you signed up for." And then she gets a pilot
Right.
called The Office in that
Oh,
seventh year.
chills,
So it's like,
chills. I love those stories, man.
yeah,
They're great. I mean, it's the 10,000 hours thing. Like
yeah,
it's hilarious. I mean, a year, obviously, I had no idea what I was talking about. I think it was more so just that already felt like a challenge to me. It felt like a challenge to commit a year of my life as a young adult to do something that I never thought I'd be doing. So, and you don't know what to expect because there's no blueprint of how to get started. Like everyone talks about getting an agent and but there's all these things that are sort of like a catch 22 with, in order to get a rep, you need to have credits, but to have credits, you kind of need a rep. So it's like it's really difficult to start out, and you're kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks in terms of what's gonna give you a little bit of momentum. So yeah, but now that I look back at it, even 6 years in now, it's so funny. Obviously you hope to be trending in an upwards direction, but it just takes so much time to get to a place where, I mean, I think on average it really does take the majority of people probably 10 years to get to the place of being like a consistent working actor. And that's a lot of commitment. That's a lot of suffering as an actor because you're spending a lot of that time, not maybe not twiddling your thumbs, but you're kind of just waiting for the
yeah.
next thing and trying to be self-sufficient, but it can be really hard and stressful, mentally tough, definitely.
Yeah. And even going into the career knowing that doesn't make it any easier when you're 3 years in, you're like, Jesus, I haven't gotten a call back in 3 years. Or, you'd think
Oh
like,
my
oh, well,
God.
we know. It's like, but it doesn't matter. It still hurts.
It hurts so much. And the thing is, you can't. I trained, so I had a friend of mine and sort of a mentor told me to think of it like a mathematical equation, and that helped me to think of it like if I do X, Y, and Z, this will be the end result. Like I will find success in this because otherwise, I think you need to have a little bit of ignorance with this career because
Yeah.
if you look at the numbers and break down like how competitive it is, you're just sort of, I feel like it's going to be too overwhelming to want to stick in it. Because to your point, like you could be doing it for 3 years and you haven't had a call back, but you're like telling yourself, well, it will happen eventually, but maybe it doesn't happen
Hmm.
because sometimes it doesn't, and that's really scary. So you're putting a lot of blind faith in yourself. So for me, what's always helped is just sort of not looking at it so big picture, just be a little more like
Yeah.
immediate. This is what I can handle right now. And that's always helped me in terms of, just sort of like narrowing my focus a bit and not thinking about everything that I need to do and all the people I'm going up against. I feel like has always been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And given the name of our show being Actors with Issues, there's always career struggles and obstacles and things that come across. Some of them are repetitive. There's sort of that friend that that annoying friend that won't stop bothering you, and then there's the ones that you kind of overcome it and you've conquered it and you can move on to the next obstacle. But we before our interview, we spoke about sort of being okay with doing bad work. So
Yes.
with that, what comes to mind as sort of overcoming that or accepting that sort of
Yeah.
concept?
I just think that's such a great thing to keep in mind for anyone who's trying anything new, but I think especially with acting because you're really putting yourself out there for the world to see you. Sometimes with smaller scale things, obviously not, but like you're putting yourself out there to be judged basically. And that's a really hard thing to do in a career where you're already very insecure about a lot of things. So I think the sooner you can become comfortable with doing work that I say bad work because like you're not everything you do is going to be good and you can't expect it to be good. And I think the sooner you become comfortable with I that wasn't that great, but I did it and I learned something from it, and I'm going to be better on the next job because I did that job.
Mm.
I think it's just such an important mindset to look at, like kind of like it tracks your growth in a way. It's like, yeah, that thing I did 4 years ago was not good, but look at where I am now, and look at the work I just did on this project recently, and I feel a lot better. I like tracking my progress, seeing how far I've come. And I think, yeah, I think if you're doing, again, call it bad work, but it means you're trying things, and I think that's just so important. I've talked to a lot of I have some friends who are so nervous about doing anything that isn't like the perfect script or whatever. I'm
Right.
like, you're not gonna get anywhere that way. Not to say you shouldn't be selective about certain stuff. Absolutely. Like
Mm.
don't go just do every project because don't do something you really disagree with or you think is going to be bad. But no, the idea just being be comfortable putting yourself out there enough and being like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'll sometimes go back and watch actors that I admire. Like I'll find, this is maybe kind of funny and crazy to me, but I'll go back and I'll watch actors earlier work in projects that maybe they weren't that proud of,
Yeah.
almost just to reassure myself, like it's okay. Like this person is an A-list celebrity and they're winning an Oscar or whatever, but here's a performance that they did very early on in their career that they're probably not too proud of, but it made them who they are now as a person. So that was a bit of a long-winded explanation, but yeah, I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah. I always tell people, especially on the show, like it's a podcast. We welcome the long-winded conversations
Yeah,
and
okay, yeah, yeah.
all of that. And yeah, so and similarly, you also sort of talked about having like a fear of exploring something new, or like you said, you had friends who only wanted to do like that perfect project and not
Yeah.
really take a risk, but this career is full of risk already and chance. So yeah, what comes to mind as like maybe an audition that you think that what has there been something you ended up booking that the audition you were not so sure about, maybe?
It's so funny you say that because Cobra Kai actually was kind of
Mm,
like that. Not that I wasn't sure about my performance, but I think there was a fear. I remember when my manager had pitched the role to me, he was like, "Hey, we want to pitch you for this. It's like a character is sort of like a karate machine, and he's supposed to be this big, intimidating force and martial arts experience, and he's supposed to have an accent. So it's all these things where I was like, well, I haven't really done fighting before, so that already is like
hmm
I'm kind of going, it's an uphill battle already. And then on top of that, the character is supposed to have an accent. I was like, oh, they're just gonna pick somebody who has an accent. Like, what am I? I'm gonna look like an idiot to this casting office if I go put on like an accent. I'm probably gonna come off as goofy or whatever. So I was already talking myself out of it, like finding reasons to be like, no, I don't, I want to save myself from embarrassment or whatever in some ways. Or just immediately saying this is going to be too much of a challenge for you. And then it's hilarious because I end up taping it and it feels really natural and there's an ease to it. And I end up getting a call back and then eventually booking the role. So you know what I mean? It's like a perfect
Yeah.
example of that where yeah, initially it's this intimidating thing, and you're trying to find all these reasons why you shouldn't do it or you couldn't do it, and then sure enough, like that's the thing that it's like one of the best decisions I made to end up doing it because
Yeah.
I'm so happy. It was yeah one of the best projects I've ever worked on.
Mm. And
Yeah.
you've done such a great variety of projects now, between, doing like science fiction and whatnot with Rebel Moon, and now you have this sort of action-packed dramedy with Cobra Kai. Is there anything sort of on your bucket list that you haven't done yet that you are really hoping you get to do?
Yeah, I that's a really good question. I love comedy. I've always been super into comedy, and I feel like I haven't had as many opportunities to do that. So I would love to be on. I think my dream with acting when I first came out to LA was to be on a sitcom. I think a lot of people have that dream, but they're just not as prevalent anymore. They're not really as much of a thing. But I would love to be in a comedy movie. Like I would love to do something that like Ben Stiller is a part of, or
Mhm.
like yeah, that would be really really fun. That's a huge goal of mine. And also after doing the action stuff in Cobra Kai, I think I want to explore that some more as well. Anything else that any opportunity that comes up with some more stunts and something action packed would be great. Like because I really enjoyed it. It was a fun challenge on top of the acting. It was just yeah, it was really cool.
And sort of what we call the $1 million question on the show is, young actors are always struggling to get that first rep, which really helps get, the ball rolling. So,
Yeah.
what advice do you have for anyone who is looking for that first agent, that first manager to help get them, like, more auditions and just get their
Yeah,
career going?
definitely. I would say my biggest advice for finding that person, one would be like just putting yourself out there in every possible way. Meaning, I ended up getting connected to my manager and sort of it was a stroke of luck a bit, but it wouldn't have happened if I didn't end up taking this. Like I took an acting class and ended up meeting my reps through my acting teacher. However, I wouldn't have met them if I didn't decide to take that class. So it's like little steps, little things that have an impact in others. So like I'm not saying that's a guarantee. You're not just gonna like take a class and necessarily meet somebody, but I think everything you do that puts you in a position to either meet somebody who can refer you or something that like any way you can just improve, And I think also if you're going like the self-submitting route to managers, if you're just finding emails and kind of cold submitting, which honestly I've no friends who it's worked for. So
Mm.
that's great. But I think if you're doing that, then set yourself up in the best way possible. Like do short films, shoot a scene with a friend, anything that can showcase what you're actually like understanding what you're good at and what you bring to the table, at least initially. Just like what you're good at naturally and where you kind of fit on somebody's roster is a really important thing to know going into getting reps. Cause I think a lot of people just want to be the actor who can do everything starting out, which is great. But I also think being not pigeonholed, but kind of knowing your type in the beginning is great because that's how you're
Yeah.
going to break into the industry, right? Like I've played a frat guy like 3 times or whatever, but it's fine, and I'll do it again because if you're getting booked for that, it's sort of you're just getting more eyes on your work, and you're sort of finding your way into getting credits and the business by you gotta have to get in somehow. Then I think the variety of roles can kind of come later on when you're more
Yeah.
established. At least that's my take on it. But yeah, I would just say just do as much as you possibly can
Mm.
to have to market yourself, but also just to like to get better and showcase that and meet people and yeah, no, definitely.
And also doesn't, folks have talked about a lot about like typecasting. Young actors are like, oh, I don't want to be typecast, but
Right.
I have to like remind young actors like, well, the word cast is in the word typecast, which means you're being
Yeah.
cast, which means you're booking. Like,
Right.
yes, you've played that sort of frat guy 3 times. One of them was in the biggest movie of last year,
There
Barbie.
you go.
So
Yeah.
it works
Yeah.
out. It's embracing the typecast can, it brings at least, if not at least a paycheck, then some. pretty solid
100%.
residuals and whatnot.
100% and some and a credit and just yeah, just more work, more experience on a set. It's great.
And before we go, we always ask our guests in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Ooh, okay. I want to try to think of something that I didn't already cover because that's usually my go-to is the being okay. This is already more than 10 words, isn't it? Um,
We'll start over.
no. I like. 10 words or less, what advice would I give? I would say, okay, I'll tell you when I'm starting my 10, so you know. I would say remember to have fun.
Mm,
That's the sure, whatever, overused, cliche, whatever. I swear that is the this is more than 10 words, but I'm just gonna finish the point. Um, I think the best work that I've ever done, and I'm sure a lot of people can feel this way, is the stuff you don't hold on to too tightly. If
mm,
you get an audition, you care about it so much, you're so stressed, chances are you're probably not gonna do a good job. You're gonna overthink it, and it's going to be way too close to you, too important. The stuff that you can relax about and just enjoy it, like remember why you're doing it in the first place with no intention of being like, I need to, or desperation of needing to book it and just being able to have fun with it. I swear that is a world of difference in the type of actor you are, at least in my experience. The stuff that I'm able to just let go and just enjoy and play and have a scene with the scene partner or reader, it makes the biggest difference. And when you're on set too, it's like stop making it so important. It's just it's a pretty fun thing. Like it's kind of silly at the end of the day. I think people just take it so seriously. Sometimes you just need to lighten up a little bit.
yeah.
So I wish I did more of that. I'm working on doing more of that. But yeah, that's my explanation in 5,000 words or less. Yeah.
Also, Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us
Thank
today.
you.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to give you a follow on social, where can they find you?
I'm just on Instagram. My Instagram is Patrick D Lewis, Luwis. It's kind of a funky spelling, but yeah. No, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, don't forget, tune into part two of season six of Cobra Kai starting November 15th on Netflix, and you'll see Miss Patrick all over there. Thank you so much,
All
buddy.
right.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Actors with Issues on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel for full video interviews. Actors with Issues is executive produced and hosted by Juan Ayala. See you next time.